Bitcoin is really struggling right now, and altcoins are continuing their collapse. I have to be honest, during this holiday season, I am a little bit concerned about the crypto markets. Let's take a look at the charts and try to make sense of all this chaos. First things first, we can see that the Bitcoin price is now coming around this very important level between the 93.5 to 95K range. I mentioned that this could be a nice level of support for Bitcoin after we wicked down and it seemed like we could have potentially continued to the upside. Now, it's very clear that that isn't the case for the moment. But should we lose the 93K level, we can see that the next major area is where we wick down around $91,000. We wicked down here a few times and it acted as major support for Bitcoin. But since the last time that we bounced off of here just a few days ago, we are now coming right back down. And so in my opinion, it seems very likely that Bitcoin can crash below $90,000 during this holiday season. Now, the question you might ask is, why is Bitcoin crashing? Everyone was talking about December being a super bullish month for Bitcoin and we would end the year very strong. During the last Fed meeting, we cut rates by 25 basis points, but it was very clear that quantitative tightening would continue. And just to reiterate, the key message that I've been talking about on this channel is that we need quantitative easing for the market to really start picking up again. And this is specifically for altcoins. Of course, Bitcoin can bounce from some of these key levels and it can perform well, although it would perform even better if the money printing would start. But when it comes to altcoins, that is a whole different ballgame, and we need quantitative easing to see some sustained outperformance from altcoins. Now, because the Fed continued to reduce its holdings of treasury securities and agency debt and mortgage-backed securities, this essentially caused the stock market to crash as well. And say what you want about the stock market and its correlation to Bitcoin, but it's very clear that when the stock market has a severe correction, so does the crypto market. I know a lot of people are pushing the narrative that Bitcoin is not affected by the stock market, and perhaps one day we will get to that level. I truly hope that's the case. But the reality is, if the stock market is super bullish and continues to move on upwards, Bitcoin likely does the same. Because the stock market had that kind of reaction after the Fed's meeting, Bitcoin just went on and continued its correction. Now, just to dial in on this monetary policy thing, of course, I brought you the ETH Bitcoin chart because, as I've mentioned on this channel, Ethereum determines the rest of the altcoin market. And we simply cannot hide away from that fact. So here on the chart, you can see that this pink line represents the Fed's balance sheet every time that they went from quantitative tightening to quantitative easing. So this pink line increases significantly when we enter quantitative easing, which essentially means that the government is printing money. Now, when the Fed is reducing its balance sheet, this line tends to go downwards. Now, what do you notice with this chart? Well, we can see that every time that this pink line goes downwards, Ethereum Bitcoin sees severe underperformance, meaning that Ethereum is underperforming Bitcoin. But when this pink line goes up aggressively and the government starts printing money, naturally Ethereum Bitcoin goes up, which means that Ethereum outperforms Bitcoin and likely the rest of the altcoin market too. Now, if you take a look at where we are now, which is right around here, Ethereum Bitcoin is still going down, and the reason being is because we are in quantitative tightening. A lot of crypto content creators are neglecting this fact. Now, we cannot evade this. So looking at this chart, we can see that ever since 2022, we've been in quantitative tightening and Ethereum Bitcoin has been underperforming. Now, what are we looking for here? When quantitative easing. As soon as this pink line starts turning around and the Fed starts printing money, that is exactly when I am expecting ETH Bitcoin to finally start outperforming and the rest of the altcoin market starting to outperform as well. I think that it'll be very clear on this chart. As soon as this pink line starts going upwards, ETH Bitcoin will likely have a very strong bounce as we've seen in the previous cycles. Now, if we come back and take a look at the Bitcoin chart, we can see that once again, we bounced at this key level, $93,000 at the time of recording this video. But as I mentioned, it wouldn't surprise me if we did break further down here, seeing as when there's an important resistance level and we tap into it multiple times, we break to the upside. Now this is a key support level, and look how many times we've tapped into it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And so it wouldn't surprise me if at this point in time, Bitcoin does break down below here and we can even revisit the $86,000 range after potentially closing below 91K, which is the next level that I'm looking at. Now, the bad news with this is that should we revisit these lower levels, Unfortunately, altcoins will continue to suffer a lot because the government is not printing money. And I'm sorry to say this, but it's just something that we cannot avoid in the crypto bull markets. Now, while all this is happening, we have Michael Saylor here trying to convince Jeff Bezos to buy $600 million worth of Bitcoin. Honestly, I'd be a little bit surprised if at this point Jeff Bezos doesn't at least have some kind of secret Bitcoin allocation that he hasn't spoken about. But it would be very interesting to see Amazon as a company to really start acquiring Bitcoin aggressively, as other companies have been doing. And then we have some other news which isn't necessarily new. Once again, El Salvador says that they will continue buying Bitcoin, possibly at an accelerated pace for its strategic Bitcoin reserve. These guys are just continuing to accumulate Bitcoin irrespective of the price, similar to Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy. Okay, so it became abundantly clear that ever since the Fed meeting, both stocks and crypto have really been struggling. Meanwhile, El Salvador is continuing to accumulate Bitcoin, and Michael Saylor is trying to continue to encourage big companies to accumulate Bitcoin. Now, to give you a little bit more of some longer term perspective, I do have an amazing chart to show you. And that chart is the total crypto market cap chart. We can see that we've gone up for 5 weeks straight post-election. It is now down for 1 to 2 weeks, and it's still above the 2021 highs. And as Dan puts it here, we are nowhere close to flipping into a proper bearish trend. As I've been saying on this channel, you need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. These corrections are very normal in a bull market, and you should be expecting it, which is why, one, I'm a huge advocate for having most of your portfolio in Bitcoin because it minimizes your downside risk, and two, you should always have cash handy, ready to buy some of these dips. And just in case that you're not convinced that some of these dips are normal, in 2021, coins went down 50 to 80% in the summer, and in 2017, we had 30 to 50% corrections every few weeks. If you're new to crypto, please understand that this is very normal. And if you've been in crypto for a while, you shouldn't be panicking because you're used to this at this point. We can't just go up hundreds of percents every single month without seeing any kind of correction. So make sure that you're staying level-headed in these markets. And once again, as Dan puts it here, you cannot get the ups without the downs. In the meantime, though, you should be enjoying your holidays with your family. But with the extra time that you have on your hands, you should be looking at altcoins that are performing well during these big Bitcoin dips. As Miles puts it here, you can learn a lot by looking at which coins have been rebounding the strongest. I've been talking about this regularly, but basically when Bitcoin has big corrections, you want to be looking for coins that are holding up the strongest compared to Bitcoin and also on their USD valuations. For example, if Bitcoin has a 10% correction and the altcoin that you're looking at only has a 5% correction during that same time period, it's likely to be a strong altcoin and will likely start performing really well once Bitcoin starts picking up again. These are the coins that you're looking to accumulate during these Bitcoin dips. Now, some of the biggest bouncers that we saw were ENA, Hype, Chex, Cpool, OM, Move, and MNT, making it very clear that utility coins are still dominating in the space at the moment. And it doesn't need to just be utility coins. Basically, any cryptocurrency that has been holding up well during these Bitcoin dips is fair game to consider accumulating for when Bitcoin bounces. You have to remember the number one goal to make money and accumulate more Bitcoin. And you should never marry an altcoin. If the altcoin is performing well, it's great to have in your portfolio. If it's not performing well and you don't see it as a foreseeable altcoin to play catch up, then you should cut it from your portfolio. I'd also like to take this Bitcoin dump as an opportunity to remind you that if you've made life-changing gains, specifically on altcoins, you should always be cashing out some of those gains irrespective of where we are in the bull market. It doesn't matter if you think that we're going to go way higher. If your altcoin, for example, did a 5x, it's never a bad idea to start taking profits because no one can accurately predict the market. Of course, we try to make informed decisions based on the data that we're given, but no one can predict the market to a T. And so if you've been up on some of your altcoins, it's never wrong to take some profits and then leave a moon bag so you're a lot less stressed should the market correct. And with that, I'll wrap up the video with this. Less than 7% of the global population is invested in crypto. So yes, you're still early. And that sums up today's video. If you hadn't noticed, I have a little bit of a change of scenery here, back home for the holidays, visiting some family. I'll try to keep you updated as much as possible, but please, during this holiday season, make sure you spend time with your loved ones and don't just sit and obsess over the charts. It will drive you crazy, and we have a lot of time for that in 2025. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.